WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. That guy over there is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. He joins us this morning, as he does each Friday morning at this time. And our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is, it's a different kind of weekend for us. In fact, you look at the forecast for this next week, it's all cool, rainy weather every single day.
Every day.
Yeah.
How quickly it changes.
Yeah. Autumn just happens. People talk about what a great season it is. Not really. So I don't know that it portends any great change in what we're seeing outside with our lawns and our gardens and things of that nature, if we're still out there gardening a little bit. What are some of the things we need to be thinking about as we get toward the end of October? And should we be doing the weed and feed on the lawn, for instance, for next year? Should we be fertilizing now? Is this the time to do that?
It's going to be a little difficult. You can feed maybe. A little bit difficult to do the weeding part, especially with the forecast, the way it looks.
Yeah.
If we'd have gotten that done this past week or two, that would have been really good.
Mm-hmm.
On any of the perennial weeds, really fall is the best time to try and get rid of those or eliminate those as best you can. Just because it's a perennial plant, so it's starting to go into dormancy for the winter, and so it's trying to take in energy, move that energy down into the root system so that it has energy next spring to sprout back up and plague us next year too.
My barn driveway, which is a gravel driveway, I cannot keep. I did great with it all summer long, keeping the weeds out of it. Every single day there's a new upcropping of fresh grass in that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that happens this time of year is we get a lot of, well, with grasses, they could be perennial grasses, but they're all coming up from seed. So that seed is moved around, landed in that gravel, which is a great place because it can get caught in there and between each piece of gravel and just kind of sift its way down in there, just enough to get some contact with enough, not necessarily even soil, but just enough organic matter that's buried down in that gravel to let it get moisture and then those seeds to germinate. So this time of year we have a lot of what we call winter annuals that are germinating now, have germinated and will continue to. Chickweed is an example of that. And then there's others that look, they're in the brassica family, which would be the same thing that broccoli and cauliflower and some of those cold crops are in, but they're different species. But they're winter annuals also. They come up, grow a little rosette. The leaves come out.
Yeah.
From the middle, make a rosette, and then eventually, as we move into late winter, early spring, then those will mature then. But they'll hang out there all winter long.
Yeah.
And then they'll mature next spring.
We still have not had a killer frost.
No.
And we're going to have cloudy skies for the next week.
We had spots of light frost.
Yeah.
This week.
Yeah.
In places. There were yards that were white. It just dipped down enough. It really didn't seem to kill anything. But
not that hard.
You could see the white, going across the lawns. And
so with the weather the way that it's going to be the next week, cloudy skies, we're not going to get a frost in the next week.
No.
And we'll have rain. And October 31st is a week from Sunday, so we'll be in November before we get the first frost of the year.
This will be one of those years that adjusts the averages. Evidently.
The averages mean nothing because we've just changed them with this particular year.
Because, a lot of times by the first week of October, definitely by the second week of October, we've had a hard killing freeze. Not necessarily everywhere, but we have all these hills and valleys and around this county that there are cold spots, and there are hollows and hollers that
down there in the holler.
Yeah. That can get pretty chilly in those north-facing slopes and things. But so somebody somewhere has probably had some things killed already with that one earlier this week. But this is out of normal for us to go this long without having a nice hard freeze.
That means there are trees. I'm looking at green trees all around. We're getting toward, it's almost the end of October. We've got green trees. The leaves haven't even started to change. We had that forecast from those crazy people with the state. saying this is going to be the peak week. If this is going to be peak, well, then peak was in June.
Yeah, we missed it. We're still waiting.
It's still green, but normally we're already chopping up
Yes,
leaves.
that's right.
We're going to be toward Thanksgiving before we're actually chopping up leaves on our lawns.
It may be. Now, I have mowed my yard on Thanksgiving Day. I did that once, I think.
Yeah.
That was a little frowned upon at the time, but it needed done, you know.
By your wife?
The last mowing of the season.
I mean, was it frowned upon by your wife or by
It could have been.
bystanders? What's that man doing there? But yeah, lawn care at this time of the year, it really gets interesting because we can't predict ahead of time what condition the lawn's going to be
Right.
in and what situations we're going to encounter and need to mitigate or to forestall.
And that's one of the interesting things about gardening is it's not always the same. You know, some years it's pretty much the same, but on a year like this, it'll be different. So we've got to adapt to those changes, and of course that's what farmers and people growing crops have to do every growing season. It's always different. It always starts different. It ends different, and exposed to different things along the way. But that, you know, on the other side, that creates some opportunities. It makes it easier to extend that growing season right now because we haven't had those really chilly temperatures. So anything that's in a little bit of a protected cover, boy, who knows when we'll be able to keep going.
The chipmunk, every year the chipmunk steals cherry tomatoes off of our potted plants that we have on the patio. And because he does, he replants them in certain places. He takes them over to the stone fence and he sits there and he eats them up and drops the seeds. Or he took them down to the barn here last year, and we had a nice plant. I got over 100 off of that one plant. He put them right behind the stone wall here today, or this year, and I noticed yesterday I got to sifting down through the grass behind the stone wall. I had a big crop of beautiful cherry tomatoes. Thank you, Mr. Chipmunk. He steals them in the summer, but he replaces them.
Replants them.
Yeah. So that happens.
Some of those could even be germinating now.
Yeah, that's true.
Start to grow little plants, and of course those will get knocked off, or you could grab them and try to transplant them and move them inside.
There you go.
Get a crop.
Did want to ask you this question about rose bushes. Our rose bushes had a wonderful blooming season and then came back late in the season. And now, so I've got those long shoots on the rose bushes that in the springtime, of course, I'll trim them back. Should I trim them back now?
You can trim those back now just to kind of make the plant a little more compact.
Yeah.
Sometimes those big wispy things will end up getting blowed around. The wind will blow them around during the winter, can sometimes weaken the stem at the base, or even snow or ice load can damage those. So you can trim those back, just enough. Don't want to do it completely, but just enough to tidy it up and make those a little stronger branches, stiffer branches that'll maybe handle what winter has for us.
When the frost and eventually the snow comes, as I am wont to do, I have forgotten to do that by then. Does it hurt to prune them back when it's really cold outside? Shouldn't do it, or should?
Well, you can touch things up. Even if you wait, you forget about it, and I forgot to do that, and nip those off a little bit. That's not going to damage anything at that point, because the plant is pretty much, if it's late into December, it will be dormant by then. So that little bit of pruning is not going to damage anything at that point.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So those are some of the questions I have had today, and gosh, it's been a while since somebody has called with.
It has been.
I don't know if you're doing it wrong or I am, but
could be a combination of both.
Yeah. We're thinking about things like apple crops and bringing things in from outdoors to the inside for the winter. I wanted to ask about storage, both of apples and of potatoes. They're basically stored in the same way. Find a cool place, right? But not a place that's going to be freezing cold.
Right. Yeah. Cold. They like cold storage. Of course, potatoes need to be in the dark. Apples don't have to be in the dark, but usually when we have them in the refrigerator and close the door, it's dark in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they need to have a little more moisture. and then at least down to 40 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And then potatoes can be that cold or even a little bit colder. Oftentimes we still store them in the basement, which is fine, and it might be 50 or 55 degrees down there. It just means that they won't preserve as long, they won't last as long.
Yeah.
Those metabolic processes will continue to happen, and the warmer it is, the faster that happens, and they'll start to shrink, lose moisture, and decay. But the critical thing there with potatoes is just they need to be in the dark, but it needs to be breathable. So if you put them in a container, I'll just stick them in a container and put a lid on it. Well, you don't want them confined in there without any air either.
Okay.
Because they might start to rot quicker.
Okay.
If they don't have a little bit of air
and
circulation moving around.
Through the course of the winter, do I need to go and pluck those eyes off of there?
Yeah, you can just pinch the eyes off.
Especially when they become spider legs. And
Yeah.
they're like
Yeah, very
8 inches
long.
All right. Can do that through the course of the winter,
And
too.
the colder it is, the less you'll have of that.
I don't want to think
the
about
warmer
winter.
it is, the quicker those sprouts will happen. That just means the conditions are there. There's enough humidity. Usually it's not dampness, but just humidity in the air, and the temperature's good enough that they start to grow.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you want to think about winter right now. I didn't think so. All right. It's Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160.